Before this video properly gets going, I can see the red bar going across, so I'll be very quick. If you're new here, you may be wondering what Prac-E actually is. Prac-E is a support network for pre-service and early career teachers, creating best-in-class digital media and in-person symposium events. If you like what you see and you're wondering how to get in touch with Prac-E and join the Prac-E community, the best way is to go to prace.com. On the homepage, one of the first things you'll see is our contact form. If you chuck your email address in here, this will allow Prac-E to keep in touch with you on your pedagogical journey. We can send you our new videos, our new articles, and let you know when we'll be in town for our next symposium event. I hope to see you over there, but without further ado, let's get to this week's video.
What's up, Prac-E's? Welcome to another episode of Ask Prac-E Anything. In this episode, we have a very special guest. It's Mr. Barnett from Advice, who's come in to have a chat with us. Thanks for sacrificing part of your day to come in for this episode.
Yeah, no worries. It's a pleasure to be here.
So your platform's kind of getting a lot of steam, I've noticed, on social media, and it's kind of just starting. Do you want to give the Prac-E audience basically a short bio, first off, who you are and your experience in the education industry, but also what made you want to take that step forward into creating online creation for supporting beginning teachers?
Yeah. My name's Barnett. I'm an experienced teacher. I've done majority of my teaching in far north Queensland. I lived in Brizzy and I moved up to Cairns when I was 21. And I got a job in a little school called Mariba, which is an hour west of Cairns. And so that's 1 year rural, and then did a contract there, did a science, HPE and maths contract. I'm HPE and humanities trained, but when you go into remote schools, they don't have people trained in those disciplines, so you really get a mixed timetable. It was great. It was tough in the first year. I was teaching year 10 physics, which I didn't, wasn't really down my path, but you learn and you adapt. And then I went down to Cairns and I taught at Trinity Bay State High School for the next 5 years. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you've had a lot of experience in rural and remote schools. You just touched on it briefly there, but what are the differences between teaching in a rural community and a metropolitan community? Because a lot of beginning teachers, there's a lot of rhetoric surrounding country placements, and that's really the country schools really dying for beginning teachers, and there's a lot of great opportunities out there. But how is it different to teaching in a city school?
Interesting enough, I'm having a sabbatical to work on this Advice education platform, and while I'm doing that, I'm also doing supply and contract teaching at Metropolitan schools in Brisbane and on the Gold Coast. How they're different. The norm is different. So the Brisbane norm is very different to the Mariba norm. It was a culture shock leaving Brisbane and then going up to far north Queensland. So you really have to just embrace it and don't fight too much, but be open to be learning a whole new world, really.
How does it change your pedagogy, do you think?
So when you're looking at pedagogy, and so I worked a lot with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kids, so the best advice I've had when you look at pedagogy is you start local and then you go national and then you go international. So you have to make it relevant to the students you are teaching, and then you can bring other information globally into it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So really, because I'm assuming, this may be a generalisation, but a lot of those people that you're teaching in those remote communities are from those remote communities and probably haven't ventured too far out.
Yeah, that's right.
So are you saying that you have to make it make sense in the local context before you're touching kind of big level thinking?
Yes. Yeah. That's the way you go about it. It doesn't have to be like you would if you were starting brand new pedagogy, you would try and give them examples of things within the area they can make comparisons with.
Yeah.
And then you would make it broader and broader as they gain the skills and knowledge to be able to comprehend what you're talking about.
Yeah, sure. So you're sharing a lot of great advice for beginning teachers, and that's kind of spilled over to a formal thing that you've created with Ed Advice. Can you explain what Ed Advice actually is and your journey in creating it?
Yeah. So what Advice is, it's a education advice survival book for the classroom type of thing. And I'm working with an experienced teacher and a senior teacher, also an ex-deputy primary school. And so what we're doing at Ed Advice is we've selected 22 of the main topics that we feel that beginning teachers and pre-service teachers should focus on. And we're giving first-hand experience and examples of the best way you should go about solving the issue you may come up with or preparing yourself so that you're able to overcome any obstacle that you may find yourself in.
So when you were coming up with those topics and kind of trying to brainstorm what would be the most, trying to put it into a category almost in terms of what beginning teachers need to know, how was that process for you? Like, how did that come about? How did you decide what was important for beginning teachers and what wasn't?
Yeah. So just looking at my own experience and working in low socioeconomic schools, what did I need with behaviour management, and so that I was able to work successfully in a classroom, or how could I better create relationships with the students. Going back to your question, why did we create Ed Advice? I created Ed Advice because, going off the statistics, 1 in 5 teachers drop out within the first 5 years. I also have seen a lot of workplace burnout. And then I've spoken to you, and then you've also said there's a lot of pre-service teachers dropping out of university. Teaching is a very stressful job, so you should know that before coming into it. In your first 2 years, you will be working really hard. 1, to create your craft, learning behaviour management, learning the content. It is a big step from university, and Ed Advice wants to make it easier for pre-service teachers to transition into the classroom, and so they don't have to make it up as they're going. So we're using our experiences that work for us in low socioeconomic schools where their behaviour is like my school is beautiful, though sometimes it's challenging. And so if pre-service teachers are able to read this or listen to it on an audio or ebook that we're going to move into, then they're prepared and they go, oh yes, okay, I've read about this before, and they're able to put the strategies that they can find in Ed Advice into practice.
So many beginning teachers, when they're getting their start in the industry, will go to rural or remote schools, or an industry that really needs great young teachers are low socioeconomic schools. Now, I've had some experience in these schools before, and something that I understood very quickly is that there are some unique challenges and some unique problems that those students face that maybe I wasn't privy to as a teacher. Maybe I wasn't even privy to as a Prac teacher as well. You've had experience in low socioeconomic schools and teaching those types of students. What advice could you give to maybe a beginning teacher embarking down that road about maybe some unique challenges that they'll face or things that they need to understand about that segment of education?
Yeah, so it comes down to building relationships and respect. That's the main thing. If you don't have the relationship, you don't have the respect of the student, then the student may not work for you. In a private school, if the student isn't doing what you're asking, there's discipline. And there's discipline in public schools, but for example, I went to Churchy and they had a signature system where if you had 3 signatures in a diary, you had a detention. If you had this many detentions, you had a suspension, etc. And then if your misbehaviour is very bad, then you can be asked to leave. So state schools don't have that flexibility. So a child may have to have certain amount of suspensions before they're excluded. So therefore, you need to be doing what you can with creating relationships and then having good behaviour management skills. So what are some interesting things that I have seeing working into low socioeconomic schools. So I just want to say kids are kids, so it doesn't really matter where they start, but some of them will have harder beginnings than others.
Yeah.
Okay? And so by showing that you care for them, they'll help you out greatly.
Yeah.
So, like I said, key is building relationships. A way to do that is getting involved in the school. If they see you involved in the school, they know that you're in it for real. And an example of how you could build a relationship with a misbehaved student or a student that is hard in your class is go and watch them at a footy game. If they play for the school rugby team, then go and watch them. And then you have something to talk with, to that student about, okay? And then that's just something to start off, okay? He knows that you care about him, you took the time to go and see him play.
Yeah.
So relationships key.
I heard a similar story where there was a young girl teacher embarking in a similar school, and she just wasn't connecting with her class, and they kind of saw her almost as a joke. But she took the effort to find out where their rugby carnival was going to be on that weekend. And she actually took time out of her day to go and watch those students. And then they saw her on the sidelines, and then from there they kind of took her under her wing. And then all the big tough boys went, no, you don't mess with her, because she took the effort and went that extra step to go see that rugby game.
Yeah. It is all the effort. Effort equals joy, and that's my number one thing. Just make the effort. Yeah. It's going to be hard to start. It is going to be hard to start. Like, you're at a new school, possibly a culture shock, you're learning the content, you're in the deep end. It is sink or swim at the beginning.
Yeah.
So find yourself a good mentor, be organised, make the effort, it gets easier.
You mentioned sink or swim, and something that we're dealing a lot with Prac-E, and those people that are sinking. You mentioned it just before that there's varying statistics about the dropout rate with people at university and also teachers within the first 5 years of their careers. People have dubbed it the teacher drought, something we talk about quite often. Why do you think the teacher drought exists in the first place? Why aren't young people sticking with the profession?
So, two things. The first thing is the workload. The workload for a teacher, it is a 24-hour job. Like, if you're not working, you're thinking about working.
Yeah.
It's not a job where you can leave it at work.
Yeah.
Like, if you might not be working on it at home, but you're thinking about it in the head, and you can't turn off. So that does get tiring. The second reason is for the amount of effort you're putting in to your work. Maybe people think that they're able to embark in another career where they work just as hard and then can make more money. Like, I'm not saying teachers don't make good money, because they do, but again, maybe you could make good money somewhere else and not be as stressed. So you're not just dealing with teaching content, you're giving 4 presentations a day, and then you're having to deal with the needs of 26 students. And so you're on all the time, boom, 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 you're firing. Teaching is very rewarding. I love it. You're great at managing people. You get all these light bulb moments with the kids, and it is very special. Though it is. It's a tough profession.
Yeah, sure.
So you definitely need to know that before going into it. Just be prepared, and then you'll just put in the effort. Find a mentor teacher. Use these resources that Prac-E and Net Advice and other education startups are doing, and then put your best foot forward.
Yeah. What can a beginning teacher do if they are feeling a little bit alone, or they're feeling that maybe they're not cut out for it, and that teaching's not for them? Is there anything a beginning teacher can do to kind of get on the front foot and help that transition?
Yeah. What I would suggest is, and I didn't know this before I started teaching, but Education Queensland gives 6 free counselling sessions, you're going to come up with a lot of social and emotional student well-being, like issues, like, yeah, so, and unfortunately that can become a burden on the teacher, because you're the first line of defense. So I would suggest that you go and talk to a counselor or psychologist, okay, on a regular basis, just to debrief, so that you don't take on any of that, so that it doesn't add to your stress, and so it doesn't lead to that burnout. You need to look after your well-being. You need to be doing mindfulness. You need to incorporate that into your teaching, into your everyday life. I think that's really important.
So one of your passion areas is talking about things that maybe beginning teachers wouldn't see on Prac, or that a lot of beginning teachers may not be privy to, especially in these rural communities, or sometimes just in education in general. You've had a lot of experience in these different types of schools firsthand. What's something that you could maybe elaborate on for beginning teachers so they don't get this massive shock when they see it? Because sometimes Prac's a bit Disneylandish, if you know what I mean.
And you worded it well. Prac is a bit Disneylandish. Prac's interesting because it is not the same as having your own students in your own classroom. So you have your mentor teachers, and the mentor teachers look after the social well-being of the students in the class. You're there at Prac to deliver content and do behaviour management. They're the main things you focus on in Prac, but you don't really focus on the well-being of students. And so the things that you won't see on Prac is students that might come from poverty, might come from domestic violence, there might be alcoholism, cramming, child's mental illness. None of that, like, I didn't see that really on my Prac, because you don't have that relationship with the student. They're not going to come to you and talk to you about that. They're going to go with the constant, which is their teacher. And so, so when you go out so for example, I worked at Mariba, and it came around to a report time, and Mariba has a large Aboriginal population, and at night time, and so coming to Aboriginal, it's interesting. Like, if you don't, everyone in the city sort of has their own opinions, but I didn't really meet an Aboriginal person until I was 21. But with how Australian history is played out, there is generational trauma that's passed on. And so going back to my example, something that I had never seen was I stayed back late to about 10 o'clock in this rural town. And so I drove to Mariba every day, so an hour to Mariba and back, and I was going to drive to my friend's house and stay there, and I saw some of my students just roaming the streets at about 10 o'clock at night. Because their family lived in poverty. They had, like, I don't know, 20 people living in a 2-3 person house. They had gone for a walk to get out of the house because there wasn't a place to sleep, so they gave their younger brother or sister a bed to sleep. Just stuff like that. You don't like, you would not see that in a well-off Brisbane like school.
No, you wouldn't.
No. And like, there's a school in Kansas, primary school, and 20% of the students there are homeless. Come from poverty. So there's a lot of money and resources put into Metropolitan schools, and that's where the main population is. But I just think these issues need to be highlighted, and I'm very passionate about it. And when you go into schools and you have your own classes, you build relationships with your students, and you get to know them a little bit better, you will come up against all this. But then you need to follow protocol, and you don't take it on, and you get the people that you need to get involved, school counsellor, you pass on this information, maybe you need to get admin, depends what it is, and you pass it on to the professional who's trained in the area to work with these students.
So there's a lot of issues there, and I've seen similar schools in low socioeconomic areas face those type of challenge. It can be hard for a beginning teacher to face that, especially when they've come from a private school background where this lived reality isn't something they've ever faced before. So what are the positives? What are the reasons why someone would actually do this in the first place?
It's very rewarding. I cannot promote going out rural and remote enough. The sense of community within that town. You build great relationships with the people you work with. It can be isolating if your family lives in the city, but then it's very social. And it's just like an open door. You just walk in, get a cup of tea with your mates, or go play in sporting clubs, and you see people all the time. And it's easy to build relationships with the kids because you will see them outside school, so that can be like a pro or a con. But you definitely become part of that community. Where I'm from, Cairns is very multicultural. My school is very multicultural. Largest Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander school in Australia. A lot of refugees that came in there, and everyone just gets on. And that's what you want. You get out of your comfort zone. Yes, kids that come from low socioeconomic backgrounds, again, they're kids, but they can be challenging. And if you go to these schools, you'll learn behaviour management to a T, and you'll be a pro.
It'll make you a better teacher.
It will make you a better teacher, definitely. I don't want to. It would be interesting to see if there was private school teachers chucked into this situation and see what they do.
Yeah.
Because they have those, I'll put a signature in your diary, and the kids go, But you need to build those relationships, get your ESCMs, Essential Skills Classroom Management, down pat, and you'll be fine. I've been doing supply teaching in Brisbane, and the kids have tried me, and nothing you can do is going. I won't be able to be It's anyway. It's a different part of Australia. It's a different Australia. You just have to be open to it, and if you're open to it, you'll reap the rewards.
I can echo what you were saying there. I personally started off public but ended up private within my own when I was a student, and initially that's what I thought I was going to be. In my first few pracs we varied wildly, but I had an experience in a really low socio-economic school, and that's made me a better educator, because like you said, there's nothing a kid can say or do that would surprise me now or really shock me. When it happened for the first time, it completely opened my eyes, because I thought that maybe the bottom level of Australia was here, and yet some of these kids' stories, although they're all the way down here, and it made the little things that happen in my classroom seem not so bad. If a kid's saying that he is really violent towards me, or if he comes abusing drugs or alcohol, or his parents are in jail and then they're really violent and they chuck a chair or something like that, little Johnny not handing his homework in on time suddenly is not that much of a big of a deal, and it helps you put things into perspective as well, I think.
I agree, definitely.
Yeah. So when we talk a lot about rural schools, a lot of these stories come up a lot of the time about, everyone's got their little horror stories. But I think sometimes it could be a bit of a generalisation. Even at the lower schools in Brisbane that I've had experience with, there were some kids that would rival any kid that I've ever taught at, even at the highest private schools. They're hardworking, they're fantastic. Do you think it gets a bit of a bad rap sometimes?
100%. The hardest schools I've had to deal with is while I've been doing supply teaching in Brisbane, because you don't have those relationships with the kids. And if you don't have relationships with the kids, they don't respect you. And so it's always the 1% doing the wrong thing. And like I said, kids are kids, but it's the 1% that ruins it for everyone. And so, like I said, rural and remote schools are not bad. God, I could not put my hand up. I would do it all over again. Again, it's 1% doing the wrong thing. So don't be afraid to go rural or remote.
We're talking about some of the challenges that maybe beginning teachers will face. What are your passion areas within education, or can you highlight things that you personally think need more attention or change?
So it is now coming in. I think mindfulness generally for both teachers and students. So I've been talking with a few schools in the Gold Coast, and I know my school now. They have a teacher well-being committee, and so there's a whole looking at the culture of the schools and how we can better support teachers' mental health. I think students' mental health also is very important, but there is a big emphasis on STEM or STEAM, and I know this is very important as for these jobs in science, technology, engineering, and maths. Is where the government is wanting jobs to go. It is a growth market, and there's money to be made from there. Though I think that maybe you can pigeonhole kids and not giving them a broad range of subjects is not beneficial for them in the long run. It makes school not as fun. The kids don't want to be sitting in a chair, and there's different types of learners. Auditory, visual, kinesthetic, etc. Not everyone fits the same mold. And if you want kids to sit down and be doing maths and science, which I think maths and science is awesome, but all subjects interlink. So I just think that it sort of needs to go back, and instead of having one lesson of maths a week, spread the subject load around. And I think English and maths teachers also like that as well, because they have to do 4 days of lessons out of the 5. And so maybe spread the workload around. It would be really interesting. Like, I'm interested to see what kids are going to be like and what results they get from having to do subjects that they don't necessarily enjoy.
You mentioned that students need a holistic education, and that maybe there's attention needs to be more evenly distributed. But I know a big movement, you're talking about mindfulness, a big movement for student education is starting to talk about life lessons and how to integrate that into education properly rather than just tokenistically. I know you're passionate about it. What views could you offer about that particular topic?
Yes. So you want students to be lifelong learners, okay? And so with that, we need to be going back to basics. So numeracy, like basic numeracy skills, basic literacy skills. If kids don't have basic numeracy and literacy skills, they can't extend their learning. And so therefore that child, if they have, a level 2 literacy ability, but they're in grade 6 or in high school, how is that kid supposed to be, how can they achieve? Also, I also think that we need to be looking at kids and food preparation, being able to cook meals for themselves, and also getting back into physical activity. Like Australia has one of the highest rates of obesity in the world. So focusing on nutrition, focusing on physical activity, and getting back to basics with numeracy and literacy, I think would benefit this generation coming through.
You're talking about what lessons students need to learn, but for our audience, a large section of it are just getting into the education industry and into their teaching careers, a lot of which are on their practicum. There's a lot of talk about how best to approach practicum. It seems like everyone's got a different perspective on how it should be done properly. What do you think a beginning teacher should really focus on during prac to put their best foot forward?
So when you're in prac, you need to be focusing on your behaviour management, because when you go out into the real world of teaching, no one is going to be there to help. Well, they will be there if you seek it, but it's you and your students in the classroom, and you need to be doing behaviour management, and you need to be putting out the fires before you move on to the next step. So things you need to be doing in prac: behaviour management. You need to work on your timing, the transition between activities. Timing is very important. At university, I was told, don't take your phone into the classroom. Okay. I use my phone all the time in the classroom. I set alarms, they go off, and the kids know that, that activity's done, I put my pen down. So behaviour management, timing, you need to be organised, and you need to have engaging lessons. If you're organised, it will make your life that much easier. And your stress, that's if you're not organised, then you're going to have high stress levels.
Yeah, for sure. So Prac-E's audience are beginning and early career teachers that maybe are looking for that extra step of practical professional development and maybe feeling a little they're lacking self-confidence about actually becoming teacher. If you could spread a message out to that community, what would it be?
Yeah. The sheer workload of a beginning teacher is very large. Okay, don't let your workload build up. You need to get organised. Writing lists is a big thing that can help you. But it will get easier after the first 2 years. You'll have your routines down pat and you'll have your resources created. So put in the work in the first 2 years and you'll reap the rewards later.
As we wrap up, your platform Ed Advice is getting more and more steam every day. Now that you've piqued the audience's interest, where would be the best place to find Ed Advice?
Yeah. So we're across several social media platforms. We're Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, and LinkedIn.
That's all we have time for this episode of Ask Prac-E Anything. Thank you so much, Al, for sacrificing a bit of your day to come talk to us.
Thank you for having me.
Just a reminder, if you want to ask a question on the next video of Ask Prac-E Anything, the easiest way is to drop a comment down below or hit up Prac-E on our social media platforms. But until then, we'll see you next time.